we're going to get started soon. I popped in a little message or a little question for everyone in regards to how everyone's feeling about their bank account. How's it looking after, this long weekend that we had? I could tell you I spent money at LCBO, which was not the best idea, but still happened. So how's everyone's bank account looking? How excited are we to be part of this today? Awesome. Okay, welcome everyone. We are joined again with Cindy for her second time here. Cindy is a certified financial planner, and she is co-CEO of Paper and Coin, and she is their financial coach as well. And Cindy, what Cindy basically does is she works with millennials to help them set their goals, pay off their debt, and also not have that stress of money. And I know I have that always, and I feel like our first session with you kind of helped us a little. So I think this will do amazing for us. So Cindy, take it away.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Benita. I'm very, very excited and pleased to be back with all of you today with another great workshop. As Benita mentioned, I am recently the co-CEO of Paper and Coin. Some of you may be familiar with Octavia, our former founder. She stepped down. She's got other big, amazing, beautiful goals in her life. So I stepped up to fill in the shoes and continue the legacy alongside my partner, Brittany. So we have a lot of beautiful things planned for the company. When I return to you next month for our next workshop, we will actually be rebranded under another name. So I'm excited to share those changes with you as well. But the one thing that won't change is our commitment to the Villij community and providing you with all this beautiful financial insight to help you develop your financial savvy and harness that beautiful control over your bank account. So today we are going to dive into, let me share my screen here, establish and execute SMART financial goals. It's capitalized because it's an acronym, and we're going to go through all of those steps together. And, this goes into more than just money. We're going to dive into, general goal setting and establishing your priorities and values. But ultimately, as we're all familiar, money makes the world go round. So at the end of the day, somehow it always ties back to money. So we're going to learn how to take control of that. I want to start off with this nice quote by Pablo Picasso. Our goals can only be reached through a vehicle of a plan in which we must fervently believe and upon which we must vigorously act. There is no other route to success. I like this quote because it does speak to, the points I'm trying to drive home today. You need a plan to have a goal. It's great to have goals and they can exist and float around in your head, but oftentimes in order to successfully execute, you need to lay out the plan. You need to give yourself a very clear direction and create a map for yourself. And you have to believe in it. You have to sort of set it up such that it is realistic and achievable. And you really absorb it as part of who you are. And I'm foreshadowing a bit here, but we'll get into all of that. So let's dive in. Why do we bother setting intentional goals to begin with? We take the time to clearly define and set goals because, first of all, it's going to help motivate ourselves. I think a lot of times we feel like we are incapable of things or we don't know what to do next because we just haven't written it down. We have these ideas that exist in our head, but sometimes we need to write it down and flesh it out in a bit of detail to motivate ourselves. Otherwise, it just sort of exists in a very shallow way in our brain. It gives meaning to our actions. So why do we do what we do? What are we trying to achieve? What outcome? What habit are we trying to create? We set intentional goals to create a roadmap for our future. That's what goals are, right? In some way, we're trying to change our future and the way we behave in a certain outcome, in the things that we pursue, and it increases our productivity. To have goals, gives you something to aspire to. It's something on that list to check off for you, and you're eager and excited to check that off. So there are three main types of goals. Actually, I just want to quickly pin the chat to my screen here, and I'll make a quick note. If anyone has questions, to go ahead and pop it into the chat. I'm going to be making sure to keep an eye on that and address questions as they come up. So please, by all means, go ahead and do so. So we have three main types of goals. There are process goals. So this involves the execution of plans and forming a new habit or skill. So, for example, establishing weekly budgeting habits. That is a process goal. There are performance goals, tracking your progress and give reason to continue to work hard. So, an example, trying to pay off significant amounts of debt each month, or aiming to earn more money each month, or spending less money on non-essential categories or categories that have been eating away at your income. And then there's outcome goals. So, there's the process, there's the performance leading you to the outcome, which an example would be to become debt-free. So the process starts with, okay, I need to instill the habit of these weekly budgeting moments to stay on top of my money. I have a performance goal to spend less money on non-essentials so that I can put more towards my debt. And the outcome goal is to eventually become debt-free. So here it is. Here is that acronym, and I expanded it even further, not just SMART, but smarter. So there are 7 items here. Specific. In order to, have success with your goals, first of all, they need to be clear and specific. Otherwise, you won't be able to focus your efforts or feel truly motivated to achieve it. So when you're drafting your goals, you want to try to answer the 5 W's. What do you want to accomplish with this? Why is it important to you? Who's involved? Does it involve other individuals, an expert? Where is it located if it's, in reference to a place? Which resources or limits are involved? You want to be specific so you're very clear about what you're setting out to do. Your goal should be measurable. So it has to be quantitatively measured. It's important to have measurable goals so that you can track your progress and stay motivated. So assessing your progress helps you stay focused, helps you meet your deadlines, and feel the excitement of actually getting closer to achieving that goal. A measurable goal should address questions such as how much, how many, how will I know when it is accomplished? Sorry, ladies, I just lost my chat box. I want to make sure that I am still seeing all of you when you have questions. There we go. A goal should be attainable. If you're setting unattainable goals for yourself, you're setting yourself up for failure and heartbreak. So your goal needs to be realistic and attainable in order to be successful. In other words, it should stretch your abilities, but still remain possible. So when you set an achievable goal, you may be able to identify previously overlooked opportunities or resources that can bring you closer to it. And so an achievable goal will usually answer questions such as, how can I accomplish this goal? How realistic is the goal based on other constraints such as financial factors? If you're trying to ditch your debts and you want to make these huge strides toward it, well, Is there something in your way, such as really high financial obligations in another category? Is there something like the fact that you are a freelancer and your income is super sporadic from month to month? Might that be a constraint? And so the goal you're setting, based on those factors, is it still actually attainable? It should be realistic and relevant. So this step is about ensuring that your goal actually matters to you and that it also aligns with other relevant goals. A relevant goal can answer yes to these questions. Does it seem worthwhile? Is this the right time? Does this match my other efforts and my needs? Am I the right person to reach this goal? Your goal should also be time bound. So you want to have a target date. Every goal should have a target date so that you have a deadline to focus on and something to work towards. I know personally, I need the hot fire and pressure of a looming deadline in order to act because I know how I am. Otherwise, I will just keep kicking that can down the road. Yeah, it's on my to-do list, but if I don't get around to it, well, okay, whatever, I'll just write it on my list for next week. And I don't get around to it, okay, next week I'll do it. But if there's a deadline, I know that, no, this must get done by this date. And it incentivizes me to actually act and stay on top of things. So by making sure it's time bound, this helps to prevent everyday tasks, like I was mentioning, from taking priority over your longer term goals. And so a time bound goal will usually answer these questions. When? What can I do 6 months from now? What can I do 6 weeks from now? What can I do today? Your goal should be evaluative. So the key word in there is the value. It has to follow your ethics and your values. You can set a goal for something, but if we consider what your values are, if it's not in line with it, is that a worthwhile goal? Is it actually realistic and relevant to you? Values is something that we're going to dive into a little bit deeper in our later slides, but it is important to ensure that this is truly in line with what you believe. The goal should be rewarding. A lot of times, it's good to have all the acronyms, the SMART and the E covered, but sometimes we need a little extra something to incentivize ourselves to act. And I very much relate to this. I need to give myself something to look forward to. Checking it off the list is itself rewarding. Yes, I did it. Good. But what else? It's good to treat yourself. When I work with my clients, I always ask them to take notes each and every month. What are the things that you have done really well this month? What are the challenges you're still working on and I can assist you with? Okay. Now, based on everything you've done well, how are you going to reward yourself? And sometimes that means like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to treat myself to a steak dinner at the end of the month. And that's fine. When it comes to budgeting, it's okay to spend money. Money is a tool, and it's okay to reward yourself with something that costs money. But again, it all needs to be in line with your other goals. So that is the SMART or SMARTER framework to setting your goals. So here are some examples of a good goal versus a not so good goal. A really good and very precisely defined goal, I will save $250 biweekly for 2 years so I can have at least $12K by my 34th birthday because I want to live in Australia for 3 months. Versus telling yourself, okay, well, I'll save money to travel abroad. It's very, very vague. It doesn't actually give you any set directions or something to aspire to, or a deadline and a reason or incentive why you should do it. So that is a very specific financial goal, and that's a very good financial goal. I have some other examples on the page, But I'm curious and I want to engage with you now. What are some examples of goals that you have, whether it's financial or not? If you can drop it in the chat, and let's see how we can make it follow the smarter framework together. So if anyone wants to just throw in a sample of a goal that is top of mind, let's work to make that smart and smarter. I'll give you a minute, and in the meantime, I'll move on to the next slide. A couple tips for goal setting to ensure that you're doing it well and staying on track. You want to challenge yourself to some extent. The more challenging, the more motivating, energizing, and satisfying it feels to actually accomplish the goal. So it's fine to set easy, simple, straightforward goals. Not everything needs to be an enormous hurdle, but there is a sense of growth and reward from setting towards a goal that maybe you didn't think you had it in you. So, oh, beautiful. I have an example from Benita. I'm working on paying off 12K of debt by the end of the year. That means paying $1,000 per month. Perfect. So it's time bound. We know Benita wants to do this by end of December 2021. Measurable, 12K is what she wants to do. And she's going to do that by paying $1,000 per month. Is it relevant to her? Well, yeah, I think that, this tells me she values being debt-free and having financial freedom and control. What are some of the others? Let me scroll back. Is it attainable, suitable to you, and achievable? Well, again, that's a matter of your income aspects. It looks like she's been doing this for a while now, since she said $1,000 a month, and we're already in May. So if you've been executing, then amazing. Clearly it is attainable. And I imagine you probably had to shift your priorities around, your financial priorities, to focus on the debt repayment. And that's amazing. What's the reward at the end of this? Well, I feel like when it comes to debt, the reward of being debt-free is amazing enough. But by that point, Benita, I would say the $1,000 a month that you have been dedicating towards debt repayments on December 31st or January 1st, 2022, that $1,000 a month that you were already used to allocating towards this goal, I would say keep that up for one more month, but not towards debt repayment. Decide how you're going to take $1,000 and reward yourself with that. And maybe a reward to you means buying something. Maybe a reward to you means like dumping that into your savings, and it feels really good to feel financially safe and secure. And that itself is a reward. So that is a really great example, Benita. There wasn't a lot of work that needed to be done there. That's already very nicely defined. We have Chanel. I made a goal in March that I wanted to pay off 3K by May 31st, and I paid it off last week ahead of schedule. Amazing, Chanel. Oh, I love that. Great job. I love to hear that. Nothing feels better, honestly, than just fucking ditching that debt. Do not let that control your life. So thank you for sharing that, Benita and Chanel. Those are amazing goals, amazing examples. Thank you so much. And you know what? The next tip for goal setting is accountability. And turns out you're all already doing it by being part of the inner village. I know personally, again, I recognize my downfalls, and I know that sometimes I need to have someone or something, whether it's a deadline or just someone who knows what my goal is, to stay accountable. Like, you can write it down, you can make it so clearly defined and take action on it. But if you keep that to yourself, it's so much easier to fall off and give yourself the excuse of like, oh no, it's fine. No one's going to yell at me for it. But if you verbalize your goals out loud with your community at Inner Village, or just another partner or a friend, well, now you've said it out loud and you've set it in stone, and someone else is cheering you on to achieve that goal. And in the back of your head, it's not just about letting yourself down. you don't want to let them down too. So it really, really helps to have an accountability partner or a group. Caitlin is looking to complete yoga teacher training. I know it's very vague. Okay. Complete yoga teacher training. You want to consider if there's any obstacles to that. Do you have the time for it right now? Are you stretching yourself to take those courses? Or do you need to make this goal more specific and clear? Is a complete yoga teacher training by carving out, 1 hour every Friday or every Saturday. I am going to focus on, completing a module. Again, I'm just pulling at strings here. I'm not sure how the course is set up, but I'm giving you an example of how to make it smarter. So I'm going to complete yoga teacher training by setting out an hour or two every Friday to work through a module. And I am going to do this by the end of August. So I'm giving myself the summer to do it so that September, I can hit the ground running. It's that sort of back to school, back to work mentality. I want to complete it by that date. So those are some examples of how to start making it more specific to you. Somebody wants to start investing stock market or something else. Okay. How do we make that more specific? If you don't know where to start and you don't know anything about investing, then maybe the goal is more clearly defined by saying, I want to start investing in the stock market by educating myself on the fundamentals through an online course, or by engaging with a professional or a financial planner to help guide me in my way. I want to start investing in the stock market by August 31st, and I am going to carve out $100 a week towards this goal. So it's good that you want to get invested, but let's start to think, what are some blocks? What are some individuals you might have to engage with, or additional questions or steps you might need to take? And when do you want to start? Or when do you want to have a certain amount of money in there? So thank you, ladies, for sharing that. Those are some examples of how to turn your beautiful goals into very clearly defined, smart, beautiful goals. Another tip for goal setting, set a monthly meeting. Find someone or a group. So again, this is riding off of the accountability. Inner Village is beautiful for that. I see how you all engage with each other every single day. So no need to set a monthly meeting when you have the community, and you can pop it in there at any time and share what your goal is and what your progress is, or just call up your friend and be like, hey, so I know I said this last week, but I kind of fell off the mark. Here's where I'm at. Sometimes you need that encouragement, or maybe not. Maybe you just need to say it out loud again to just kind of put it in stone that, yeah, I am working towards it. Some hiccups here and there. Here's what I'm doing. Take ownership. So you want to take ownership of your goal and integrate it into your identity. So if your goal is to become debt-free, you take ownership and you're going to tell yourself, you know what? I am a financially responsible individual. This ties into all of the amazing daily affirmations that you express and affirm in the Inner Village every single day. If your goal is to, run a 10K by the end of the summer, take ownership. I am a healthy person who prioritizes fitness. If your goal is to earn more money, I am a boss bitch who can bring new clients in, and I am confident of that. I can do this. So whatever your goal is, make it part of your person and your identity. Believe that you are already that. If you want to be debt-free, okay, I am financially responsible person. Build that into your identity and make it part of who you are. Another tip is to revise. Every now and then, you realize that maybe you overshot, or maybe you didn't, but life happens. Things come up, set you off course, and you want it to be realistic and attainable. So maybe you need to adjust the deadline you set for yourself. Maybe you needed to adjust the steps to get you there because something came up. So it's important to revise and understand that it's not a failure, that your goal needs to be modified halfway through the ride. Because, it's all well and good to plan for things, but to assume that just because we plan for it, we have complete control over the universe is naive, because yeah, life happens, right? So we want to be flexible enough to revise and learn from our mistakes. Maybe the mistake was that, I just set up the wrong parameters for myself. This is not realistic. Or learn from what went wrong or what came up, and like, oh, now I know when I revise this that a potential block like this can come up again. So now I need to factor that in to the way I rewrite this goal. And again, reward yourself. Give yourself an incentive and celebrate what you have done. Please don't just set goals and achieve them for the sake of checking it off. Reward yourself and celebrate yourself for having done it. And again, that further instills that ownership, that the completion of that goal is part of who you are. So before we start setting our goals, we need to be very, very clear on why we are choosing these goals. So it's very helpful practice, in the morning when one of the village hosts sets out an affirmation. You see it, you read it, you affirm it, sit somewhere quiet, comfortable environment, close your eyes, and allow yourself to not only absorb those affirmations, but imagine how those affirmations will manifest into something. It's important to touch base with yourself and your feelings, not just create goals that look nice on paper, or create goals because it's something that maybe a friend or a parent is nudging you towards, like, you should have a house by next year. Why don't you have a house yet? Your brother and sister do. I'm projecting myself onto you guys right now. But that's what I mean. That was a goal of mine for a while because that's what my family wanted and projected as a value. But then I had to take a moment and be like, wait, but do I actually value that? Is it actually important for me to have a home? Are there other things that are more important to me? Do I care that my siblings already have kids and a house? Not really. We're different ages. We're doing completely different things. I needed to get grounded and clear on what was important to me, on what my values were. So that's what we're going to work through next. Before we dive into why it's important to touch base with your values, let's actually take a moment to start to think and flesh through what our financial goals are. What is your ideal income? What's your monthly cash flow, and why are you choosing that? Is it just because it's a sexy number, or it's because you know what your expenses are and you have a feeling you need X dollars more each month to do all the other amazing things you want to do? What is your ideal total net worth? So net worth is assets minus liabilities. So everything you have saved minus everything that you owe. And if you have a lot of debts and not a lot of savings, you have a negative net worth. So are you just seeking to at least hit the black, hit net zero, get out of debt, and then grow from there? These things are important to think about, as opposed to just being like, yeah, I'd like my net worth to be $1 million. Well, when and why, and is it realistic? Think about what's actually really, really relevant and important to you right now. When it comes to your home, your ideal home, where is it located? Does it have a view? What does my furniture look like? These are really amazing manifestation exercises. because I feel like even my story in becoming a co-CEO at Paper and Coin is something that I envisioned without realizing it about 2 years ago when I first discovered Paper and Coin. And I'm like, oh, beautiful branding, such beautiful aesthetics. That's what originally drew me in. And then the content, I'm like, oh, this is really good. This is like very fresh, exciting content relevant to my demographic. And I started to hear from Octavia. I'm like, oh, I like her thoughts. I'm like, you know what? I got to find a way in. This is amazing what she has set up here. I want to find a way to inject myself into this and elevate it further. And in the back of my head, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if I could one day manage and control something like this and be the head of this? And it was something in the back of my head that I kept thinking about. Like, I just wish I could run this company and do so much more and, really share what I have to offer. So it was in the back of my head the whole time. And at no point did I actually think it would involve Octavia stepping down, but I don't know, destiny and fate kind of just happened that way. It's something that I started to feel more and more passionate about and started to believe that it could be true. And I think for a lot of you who practice daily affirmations and who practice manifestation and vision boards, you know that, the main crux to its success is believing that it is true and that it will be true. So think about it, even insofar as like the physical stuff. Where is your ideal home located? What does it look like? How about your career? Do you want to own a business? How many? Not just one. Don't stop short. What are you doing in your career or the business? Who are you working with? I mean, I know that I envision myself aligning with like-minded partners to create an even bigger and better and more beautiful community. And here I am, aligned with the Villij. And I didn't even do that for myself. Octavia got the ball rolling, but then I fell into the position and owned it and took over. And I'm like, yes, you know what? This is exactly where I wanted to be and what I wanted out of my role as a business owner. So I strongly believe in manifestation. Going further with the career, what types of clients or customers do you have in the ideal situation? What does your compensation look like? So really chew on these types of questions every day when you're taking your time in the morning to do your morning magic rituals, meditation, some body movements, sitting in the garden, whatever it may be. I know I start my morning every day. I go out into the garden, I water it, and I look at all my little plant babies and see how they're coming along. And I think about my week, what I've done, what I'm hoping to do, and what I want for the long run. And that's my morning every day. And it helps me be very, very clear on the direction that I'm heading. And these vision exercises help me define how and what type of goals I want to set for myself. So we have our visions. We want to ensure that they are in line with our values. We know that it's important to set goals. We took some time to clearly think about what we truly want, uninfluenced by others around us. It is truly based on what you want and therefore based on your values. So life can be very easy when you acknowledge what your values are and you make plans and decisions that honor them. So for example, if you value your family and time with family, but you have to work 70-hour weeks in your job, well, you feel internal stress and conflict. So if your goal was to earn more money and you're achieving that goal by working an insane amount of hours, and it's conflicting with the fact that being with your family makes you happy and burning yourself out at work makes you very unhappy and stressed. Is that the right goal? Did you frame it in the right way? I'm sure that you still want to make more money, but what were the other very specific details attached to that goal to get you to the point of making more money? Maybe it means switching your job entirely as opposed to taking on all these extra hours. There's a lot of ways you can make more money. Maybe it means starting a side hustle by simply monetizing a hobby that you already love to do in your downtime. So you have to keep yourself in check and ensure that all this effort you're putting into creating and very clearly defining your goals is still in line with what you actually value. And so when you write your goals and you're practicing your vision exercises every morning, is there a very clear and meaningful intersect, or are they fighting each other? And if that's the case, then there needs to be a revision there. And again, goals need to be revised, like I said before, in order for them to be successful. It could be because you set the wrong parameters. It could be because of an external block that came up, or it could be because you realized this goal does not make me happy the way I have set it out. It's time to change the way I get to this goal. So another example, if you don't value competition and you work in a highly competitive sales environment, are you likely to be satisfied with your job? So maybe, in your vision exercise about your career, like I would love to work in marketing or whatever it may be. But it turns out you got, this corporate marketing gig for a big agency, and it's just so intense and ruthless. Like, this doesn't feel great. And you know what? The same was true for me. I valued being able to educate and instill confidence in others when it comes to finances. But I started off in the banking world. And it was all about pushing investment sales and insurance sales, which, yeah, they're important products. They're very important products, but it was all about sales, 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 sales. And at no point did it become important or relevant in that world to actually take time to educate people and help them understand, why are you buying this investment product, or why do you need insurance, or what do you need to do to manage your cash flow and help you reach your goals. It was the wrong environment for me. So my goal was to enter the financial industry, but it was competing with my value to have independence and not be forced into sales quotas, because that felt gross to me. I'm not trying to sell, I'm trying to uplift. So I changed my scenery altogether and I went independent. And that's how I revised my goal to be in this industry and do what I do. When you know and truly understand and appreciate your own values, you can use them to make decisions about how to live your life and confidently answer questions like, what job should I pursue? So I mentioned my example. While I'm going through these, please pop into the chat some examples of how, maybe you pursued something that you thought you really wanted, but later found out this does not feel aligned with me. And sometimes it's really, really difficult actually just recognizing and accepting those conflicts, because you work so hard to get to a certain place and do a certain thing. And then you get there and realize, this isn't what I wanted. I worked so hard to get here. Do I just keep grinding anyway? Or do I make a change? So for anyone who is comfortable sharing an example of maybe something that was very important for you to achieve or chase after, but you later found was in conflict with your values. So another example, should I accept this promotion? Does that mean I'm going to have to work a lot more? Is there going to be a lot more responsibilities? Is it going to eat away at my free time? Am I going to have enough of a work-life balance if me time is what I value? Should I start my own business? Well, do I value having control and being able to make decisions and be a leader to other people? Or do I value being an excellent part of a team? Maybe I don't want to start my own business. I actually just want to work for a business that I feel aligned with, as opposed to starting a business of my own, because I don't feel like I want to be the one who is carrying the burden of responsibility. So Kalisha has given a response. I'm feeling the tension of my current job as a senior designer at a marketing agency and my values of harmony, ease, and free time. Yeah, you are in a senior position in a role that I'm sure you're very passionate about, but now you feel like, well, I'm fucking good at my job. Why aren't I happy? Why don't I have the creative freedom to choose my own clients or work on my own schedule and my own ideal hours? Do I actually want to work for an agency, or do I want to try freelancing a bit on the side, leveraging the connections I've already made and start to network more and find out how I can eventually phase away from the agency and potentially start one of my own, or just comfortably be an independent designer? Because I imagine that if you are in a senior role there, you know what you're doing and you are amazing at your craft and you are an expert in your field. You're not just some DIY, I read a design book, a how-to, and now I'm just trying to put myself out there. No, chances are you know exactly what you're doing and you'll do it very well. So maybe it's just the fear of, well, where do I even start? How do I get my first clients? Nothing's saying that you need to leave entirely to start a business. And in fact, to be financially responsible, I would advise anyone who is seeking to start a business or start freelancing, you ease into it. Because often when we start a business, it starts off in the negative. You put in a lot more money and effort than you initially get out, but that becomes your baby. And you're so eager and excited and passionate about working on it every day. And then it pays its dividends in the long run. You're welcome, Kalisha. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I mean, I feel like that kind of feeds into number 4 here. Should I compromise or be firm with my position? So, is there an opportunity to speak to one of your supervisors or managers or whoever may be above you, if there's anyone above you, to compromise with, like, I am a senior designer here. I would like to find some balance and maybe negotiate the fact that I'll be working from home these days and I can come in on these days, or I only want to work from these hours. Is there any room to compromise and negotiate and be firm with that? Or is it a losing battle that's going to end in more heartbreak and perhaps compromise your position at the firm? I can't answer that for you because I don't know all the context, but it's important to at least ask these questions and play out the scenario in your head based on the fact that, you value that harmony and free time. It's great that you're probably making delicious amounts of money, but are you happy about it? Are you able to actually put that money to use in a way that pleases you on the day-to-day, as opposed to, well, I'm just going to blow it on some big trip at the end of the year to forget this brutal, ruthless year of working hard? Is that actually enough to make you happy and make you feel like you have balance? So Victoria answers, I quit a workplace where I used to work with kids with disabilities because they didn't value and compensate staff enough. Yeah, it's a big red flag. I landed a job now doing more admin and working with students with disabilities, but I'm feeling similar. I tried to start a business when I was in my last job and put that on pause when I got hired for my current job. I love the field, but sometimes feel hesitant to speak up or pursue my own business. Okay, So it sounds like there's some conflicts of time here and your values. You obviously value working and helping with children with disabilities, but there was an issue with compensation. And you're feeling that like that continues to be the case. So now we need to start to think, how can I leverage this passion and monetize it in a different way? Is it through courses? Is it through, you know, becoming a figurehead for the topic and doing more speaking engagements, talking to media? Is that something that you consider? Is it more the hands-on working with children? Are you looking at the right agency, or is there another route to apply these same concepts but in a different environment? Because you're feeling burnt out. And that's not going to make you happy. I mean, before I started my own business, that's the number one thing that would make me leave any other role. As much as I loved the job or position, at some point, I just couldn't stand knowing that whatever my scheduled shift was or whatever it may be, I had to show up, rain or shine, regardless of whether or not I felt good or motivated that day, regardless of whether I felt sick or not. And if I felt sick, oh my God, now I need to find someone to cover me. It just didn't feel right. So for me, it was this constant battle with working for another company or agency or corporation that just didn't feel right to me. And so I knew that, well, it looks like I need to go solo. But I also value being able to have some financial control, and I'm worried about being able to pay the bills. And so I took stock of all of these things, all of these fears, what I value and what is standing in the way. And I found the compromise to ease into the side hustle and turn into my full-time gig. And I can appreciate the fact that if you're already working somewhere that's working you to the bone, you're already working so many hours, when do you find the time to pursue a side hustle? I get it. But at the end of the day, if you don't, what's the alternative? You continue to just grind day in and day out while doing nothing else to help detour yourself in a different direction towards something that will really make you happy. So there's some compromise that needs to take place. Either you need to reassess your values, or you need to momentarily make the compromise of, I know that I cannot grind like this for a long time. So maybe for the next 3 to 6 months, I accept the fact that I'm probably on top of my busy schedule at the agency. I'm going to have to put in an extra 5 or 10 hours a week to start making moves on this side hustle. So that 3 to 6 months from now, I can probably walk away from the corporation or the agency. Because again, I know when it's in relation to your free time and what you feel like you have the capacity to do, that's tricky sometimes, because you're like, well, what else can I do when I'm just always working? But you have to think honestly and realistically to yourself, what's the alternative? Stay and just do exactly what you keep doing and keep feeling exactly the same way that you are feeling. So there's compromise. You need to have these conversations with yourself and have them out loud. Have them with the Inner Village community and take stock of how other people think. Put some of your ideas out there. I mean, I'm not an expert in all things, so my opinion is just an opinion, but not the opinion, the right choice for you. I'm sure a lot of other individuals in this presentation right now might have other thoughts for you. So share it out loud. All right. Thank you all for engaging. These are all beautiful comments here. I'm going to, for the sake of time, move on to the next slide here. I already sort of alluded to this. We are not static. We are always evolving and changing and growing. It's very much a part of what the Inner Village values and objectives are, is to help us grow and nourish our values and needs and wants. So maybe what you value today is not going to be what you value a year from now. And there's an example here. When you start your career, success measured by the amount of money you make and your ability to uphold a certain status might be the top priority. And so you value that very much when you chose that career. You know, working for a big marketing agency felt so sexy because I'm in this beautiful office building. It's what I always imagined. You know, I watch Suits and they're all well dressed and it's a beautiful setting. I want that. I value that. It's going to make me feel so, so good. But then I start to feel a little exhausted with the commute, with the trying so hard to look perfect every morning, getting on the subway to go to a place where I don't necessarily want to be to do the thing that I am passionate about doing. And I just partnered up with someone and we want to start a family. And now I value work-life balance. So now I'm realizing that what I valued last year is not what I value now today. So as your definition of success changes, so do your personal values. Keeping in touch with your values is a lifelong exercise because, again, it's going to keep changing. And you should constantly revisit this when you start to feel unbalanced in your life, uncomfortable in your own skin for some reason, and you don't understand why. Why do I feel like something is just not quite right about my life or about my relationship? So, you know, I mentioned this in our last workshop, but to those of you who weren't there, you know, I'll share a personal story. And, you know, my definition of, I don't know, personal relationship success was being able to partner up with someone and get married and kind of get that out of the way so I can focus on other things, bigger career moves. But it's feeling really not right in that situation. Very uncomfortable in my own skin, very severely depressed all of a sudden. And I couldn't quite ignore any longer those feelings. And I kept trying to choke them down, being like, well, I mean, couples fight, married couples fight all the time. That's what marriage is, right? Like, it's not supposed to be easy. But is it supposed to be that painful? Should I actually, you know, believe the fact that I am not worthy for more? Should I actually believe that I'm not allowed to aspire to something better? And it was really hard, and it took me finally verbalizing out loud to those around me, because I didn't want to talk about these problems. I just kept up the aura for almost a decade that yeah, we're happily together and things are great. They were not. And I started to talk about it, and it became very clear. Others who I loved and cared deeply about helped me realize that it was very clear that it was not right. And even though I valued being able to have a lifelong partner, he wasn't the right partner. And so last year in March, I separated from him. And it turns out it's the best decision I've ever made for myself. And now I do feel like I am owning it. I have spread my wings. I am a fucking woman reborn. I am able to lean into my business. And finally, every other decision feels like it's making sense. And thank you so much for all your support. I'm getting a little emotional too. So thank you for making this a safe space for me to share and be vulnerable with you too, because I'm a real human. You know, I'm not just here to lecture you. But that's just a great example of how my values change. And I don't know that what I value is that one partner to be my lifelong partner right now. I don't even know if what I value is monogamy. I don't know. These are questions that I'm thinking about and trying to get to the heart of every day. And even on the previous slide, number 5, should I follow tradition or travel down a new path? I made a little note about monogamy. I know that traditionally, and my parents would never understand it, it's like just one person and only one person. But I don't know. I think I'm starting to realize that I'm the kind of person that kind of just loves love. And I think that I am very capable of being able to engage in a lot of beautiful relationships simultaneously, as long as they're open and honest and respectful. So here I am trying to carve a new path for me. And thank you for your kudos and support. But that's my example of how my values have changed, on how I had to reassess what my goals were and whether or not what I was trying to do is going to see me to any success. Because if I stayed in that marriage, I don't actually believe that I could be here today as a co-CEO with such confidence and feeling like, yeah, I have a clear vision, because I was just so wrapped up and burnt out emotionally and manipulated all the time that I don't think I actually believed that I was capable of where I'm at today. So there was a huge disconnect there. And it took a lot of those morning vision exercises and moments of clarity to understand that. So, how do we put this to work? Circling back to our goals, write them down. Write that shit down. It's great that it exists in your head, but sometimes we forget. We forget very, very important, well-meaning, intentional goals that we know we want, but sometimes we just have to write it out. So we see it on paper and like, oh yeah, yeah, can't forget that. That's important. And that might even go as far as like, your daily affirmations. It's great to see it on Mighty Networks and to say it out loud, but sometimes we need to write it out and put it on a Post-it note on our mirror, write it on lipstick. So every morning you remember that you believe in that and you affirm that. You see the affirmation once in Mighty Networks in the inner village, but maybe you need to see it more than once. You want to write that out somewhere where you're going to see it all the time and remind yourself that this is what I aspire towards. Money does flow to me. I am a boss bitch. I can do this. I am a healthy and wealthy person. Write that down. Yes, Kim, write that shit down. Prioritize your efforts. So great to have multiple goals, but sometimes if we try to divert and split up our efforts in too many directions, you're not going to get anything done. I'll give you an example financially. When it comes to dealing with debts, you got credit card debt, you got a line of credit debt, you got student debt, you got a mortgage. Okay, I want to get rid of all these debts, and I have the means. Let's give an example. I have the means potentially to devote up to like $2,000 a month towards ditching my debts. That's a lot. And I'm just going to split it evenly in all directions. But the problem with that is that when you split that big, beautiful potential of $2,000 into so many tiny little chunks in so many directions, you go to look at your progress. What progress have you made? And you're noticing that neither of those debt balances have really gone down much. And you're like, what the fuck? I swear to God, I'm putting like $2,000 towards my debts. Why do they all look like they're sitting at the same freaking balance every single month? Because you got to prioritize your efforts. And so when it comes to debt repayments, a lot of times with my clients, I adopt either the snowball method or the avalanche method. You may have heard of that in the past, but essentially it involves, paying the minimums on most of your debts, and you pick one to prioritize your efforts towards. So if you have $2,000 a month to devote towards debt, and the minimums with all of your other debts, maybe it totals to $500, great, you've got $1,500 left to slap towards one of those debts and hit it right on the head with vigor. Focus plus intensity equals results. So now at the end of the month, I'm not checking the balances and being like, where the hell did my efforts go? I am seeing that the $1,500 that I've directed to that one goal first, that one debt, oh, that went down. and it's almost gone. And I'm feeling fucking great about that. Yes, I am making progress. I see my results. I can do this. I can become debt free. So you have to focus and apply intensity to one goal, or at least just a few goals at a time, as opposed to trying to do everything all at once. As women, we are notoriously superheroes, and we are built to multitask and do it all. But sometimes that's just going to burn you out. It's just going to make you feel like, well, why the hell am I doing this? I'm just not seeing results, or I'm just not feeling like I'm getting anything out of it. Focus your energy. So don't feel like you are failing by only being able to do one thing on a list of 10 things that you thought you might be able to do simultaneously. Because again, you don't want to set yourself up for failure. So pick and choose your priorities. Identify potential blockers, or the constraints that might make it difficult to achieve your goal. So knowing what the potential obstacles are ahead of time means you can make plans to work around them. So let's keep playing with this debt scenario here. I know that I am a freelancer and I've created a budget, and I'm seeing ahead of time that, ooh, okay, all of my 6 months clients seem to kind of all wind down in June. So that means if I don't do anything now to start prospecting for new clients, I'm going to be broke come July. And whatever amazing progress I was making towards my debt gets stalled and put on hold, and I'm probably going to have to take on more debt. So now I've identified this blocker, and I'm like, okay, here's a sub goal. In addition to paying $2,000 a month, I also make a note: must sign up 1-2 new clients in August or in May to ensure that I can stay on this goal. So try to call yourself out in advance, because not everything's going to go perfectly. Things are going to come up. Instead of ignoring it and be like, no, it's fine, I'll just deal with it. Yeah, you will deal with it, but do you want to deal with it frantically and bumping into walls and like, oh my God, how did this happen? I didn't see it coming. Or do you want to be mindful, ready, and prepared to deal with it when it comes? Thank you, Esther. Please feel free to leave if you must. I know I'm running a little over time. I'm on the last slide, so we're almost done here. Thank you so much, Esther. Number 4, create a detailed to-do list for achieving your most challenging goals. So some of our goals are really, really big and juicy. And again, let's keep running with this debt scenario since we're talking about financial goals. And if you've got 6 different debts that you need to attack, well, now you want to do some sub lists. Okay, I'm going to do my MasterCard first, and I'm going to do X number of dollars towards that. Or, I want to first make sure that I consolidate my MasterCard balance onto my line of credit so I can at least have a lower interest rate. And that way my payments are going to go further, faster. Great. And now I'm going to put X number of dollars towards that. And then once that's paid off, great, I'm going to redirect my focus to this other debt, whatever it may be. So girl loves me a list. I love it. List, sub list, sub list, sub list. Like, I love it. Because the smaller you make those sub goals, the more rewarding it's going to feel when you can just keep checking things off. Because sometimes we have a big task or project that we need to attack, but because it feels so big, we don't even want to start it, because it's like, oh, that's too much to complete today. Yeah, of course it's too much, but in the back of our head, we know that there's multiple steps that are needed before you complete the full task. But if you could just write out those multiple steps, then at least by the end of the day, you can check off one little thing. And that incentivizes you to keep going. That allows you to see the progress and the fruits of your labor, as opposed to doing all those subtasks without having it written down. And at the end of the day, we're like, well, I still didn't finish the whole project. So what have I done? Again, write it down. Write down everything that you've done, every little thing that it takes, so you can clearly cross it off and show your progress. Which leads us to number 5, track that shit. Remind yourself that you are doing it. you are getting it done. If it's health and fitness related, get some kind of fitness app that allows you to track the fact that, yeah, I ran another 5K, that's the usual, but this time I did it 30 seconds faster. I am actually making progress towards my goal of, being faster, stronger, healthier, whatever it may be. So write that down to the minute detail. And that's it, ladies. There's a lot that I put out there, but what I love about this community is that I can make myself vulnerable and share, because I'm feeding off of you. You are making yourself vulnerable to me in the chat and sharing your stories, and I appreciate that so, so much. So thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for engaging and sharing what you're working on. And thank you for, accepting me and giving me the applause that deep down, I feel like I need sometimes to remind myself that I did a good thing. I left him because I needed to. It was the right thing, but you doubt yourself sometimes. So thank you for the affirmations. And I affirm all of you and all of the amazing things that you're doing. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Benita. I know that there were some questions that you prompted in Inner Village this morning. I would love to share that with the group.
Cindy, do we have any questions that people want to put in the chat? If not, we just had a question on Inner Village that was shared today that Cindy can kind of just give us a brief breakdown on. If not, if you guys have to leave, her next talk will be next month, so definitely tune in. And Cindy is on Inner Village, so if you have any questions, definitely reach out to her, or put it in our posts and just tag Cindy, and she'll be able to start the conversation for us, and then we can all learn from your question. Cindy, if you want to take a couple of minutes, you can definitely answer the question I brought up. If not, we can save it for the next conversation as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing that it's still mostly a full house here. Not a lot have left, so let's address it. And Benita, the question was yours, and it was an amazing question. When you have both debts and you're seeking to invest at the same time, should you prioritize one over the other? Should you try to do them both at the same time? And this goes back to, again, prioritizing your efforts, but there's also, a mathematically correct answer here, I'd say. And for the most part, if we're talking about debts that are over 6% interest, the answer is clear. Attack those debts before you bother to invest. And here's why. Because you need to look at debts as a type of investment. It is an investment that has a guaranteed negative rate of return. So your credit card debt, if you have $2,000 of MasterCard debt, that is a guaranteed investment of negative 19.99% a year. Okay, so I have $2,000. Do I put it on that MasterCard, or do I invest it? Well, to make investing it the mathematically correct choice, to break even, your investment would need to earn 19.99% just to net zero with that difference. But to make it the better choice, it needs to earn more than 19.99%. And what do we know about investing is that guarantees are not returned. Returns are not guaranteed. And that you could actually suffer a loss. So that's why I'm saying when you have very low interest debts, the opportunity to either match that interest rate or beat it in returns now seems more possible and favorable in the direction of investing, or at least doing it simultaneously. So credit card debts, get rid of that shit before you even think about investing. And don't feel like you're missing out because you're not investing right away. But my girlfriend, she's investing, she's already got 50K and I'm feeling really behind. Okay, but did your girlfriend have to go to school as long as you did? Did your girlfriend, get saddled with as much debt as you have? Are you really behind? Or are you two completely different people who have lived different lives and thus need to react to it differently? Stop comparing yourself. I talked about this last time. Stop comparing yourself, focus on what's happening in your situation, and then, yeah, make smart, thoughtful, practical decisions based on that, but not based on what they're doing or what you think they want you to do. So, yeah, to answer the question, I would say for the most part, your credit cards, lines of credit are probably going to be high enough interest that it may not warrant taking a risk in the investment market. Focus on paying that off first. And then once you're left with things like student loans, which are, notoriously low interest, and a mortgage, if you're going to wait to invest before you pay off your mortgage, you'll be waiting forever. You're never going to invest. It's you're talking like 25 years. You're going to wait that long to pay off your mortgage before you invest. You'll be retired with no retirement savings. So yeah, we need to be practical. So it's not so simple to say is like, yeah, get debt free first and then invest. There needs to be a judgment call there in terms of the opportunity cost of potentially earning a decent amount of money in investments versus absolutely definitely being charged a certain amount of money in interest. So I hope that's very clear and that makes sense.
Definitely. We also have a question for you in the chat. Should we be saving an emergency fund? Should we have an emergency funds before paying off our debt? What's the ratio behind an emergency fund?
So an emergency fund, ideally you want to be able to withstand, like if you lose your income, whatever it may be, you want to be able to withstand at least 3 months worth of your monthly expenses. So whatever that amounts to, that's kind of the goal. 3 to 6 months is the ideal goal. But when we have a lot of debts, sometimes you need to have at least a little something. And to that, I usually say, okay, you have your debts for a short period of time, just pay the minimums and try to at least set up $1,000 as your starter emergency fund. Okay, cool. I got $1,000. That can go quite a long way depending on what the needs are. Perfect. Now I'm going to return to going head fast on my debt repayment, the high interest debts, so my credit cards and my lines of credit. And once that's clear, now I'm going to return to my efforts of like, okay, I want to boost my emergency savings further. So it's a little closer to 3 to 6 months while still servicing those other lower interest debts. But now I'm going to redirect the money that I was putting hard into those high interest debts to expedite the goal of building up that emergency fund even more. Now, once you're there, the emergency fund is fully funded. I want to be clear, that's savings, not invested. You should not be investing your emergency fund because, again, investments can go down in value. The stock market is really wild. Anyone following the news and even seeing, shit like Elon Musk tweeting something and it manipulates the entire market. It's like, well, shit, if an emergency happened tomorrow and Elon tweets something today, does that mean I'm screwed? Because he tweeted something and now I expected to have 10K in my emergency fund and it went down half in value. So we don't know when emergencies are going to occur. And so you should assume that it's always a very short and immediate time frame. So we don't want to invest it. You want to keep it safe from market risk. So keep it in a regular savings account or a high interest savings account. So now that you have your step 1, build a buffer of $1,000. Step 2, clear those high interest debts. Step 3, return back to the emergency fund and boost that to at least 3 months. Great. Step 4, now we are working towards those lower interest debts while dipping your toe into investments at this point. So to be clear, you want to prioritize the non-invested emergency fund savings first, in addition to your high interest debts first, before you move on to investing. And you can do that simultaneously to paying down the lower interest debts, student loans, mortgages, or really low rate lines of credit, for example. I see we have another question here as well. I'll just quickly address. What type of bank account would you recommend for savings for short midterm goal, like a travel plan, expensive equipment? Yeah, so a regular savings account for that or a high interest savings account. EQ Bank is notorious for offering one of the higher interest rates on savings accounts. interest rates are kind of trash these days. So sometimes you feel like it's laughable, like, okay, thanks very much for your 0.75%, but what's that going to do for me? EQ Bank does have a pretty competitive, based on what's available right now, interest rate. So that's what I would recommend for your emergency savings and your short-term goals, like your travel fund, and what I call your slush fund. So saving up for a near future purchase. Yeah, not invested, regular savings. If there's no other questions right now, then I'll wish you all a good night, but the conversation doesn't end here. As a reminder, I am part of the Inner Village, so tag me directly if you have a question for me, and I'm very happy to engage. So thank you all for taking the time to be with me here today.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for investing in yourselves, and you deserve to be well. Bye, everyone.